So I'll start over. Is that good?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So this is to present MR 3029, the on-call miscellaneous paving repairs. This contract was advertised on August 21st of 2020 with an 18% MBE goal and 1% VSBE goal. We have received 2 bids. We're recommending award to P. Flanagan and Sons, Inc. in the amount of $8,755,167. They met the MBE and VSBE goal. The engineer's estimate was $9.9 million. The bid came in under 12%, and we are recommending award to Flanagan. There were no protests received, but we did request no bid forms and received several of them. I believe we included 7 of them. And the reasons for no bid included other commitments precluded them from bidding. The solicitation was not something they provided, and the like. So we are comfortable with moving forward with the 2 bids that we received and recommending award to P. Flanagan. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on contract MR 3029?
So the,
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
so the lack of bidders had nothing to do with the geographical location of it? Because jobs are all spread out, it seems like, right?
Yes, that's true. Some of them did, I'm sorry that I didn't include this, some of them in their no bid forms did respond that it was outside the location in which they were comfortable providing the work. So it was too far away from the plant, asphalt plant.
Right.
So you are correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that?
This is Mary. I'll move for approval.
Okay, so we have a motion by Member Ganjemi for MR 3029. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Gaines. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. No opposed. Motion passes unanimously. Next up is J01B600011, Dynac Maintenance Contract.
Yes, sir. We are representing that contract, which is a sole source Dynex maintenance contract. It is to procure a full service software maintenance and service plan, including repairs for the Dynex SCADA system. TransDyne Corporation was the original manufacturer, equipment manufacturer, and the developer of the Dynac custom software. However, in January of 2014, CAPS acquired TransDyne and its proprietary system. Due to the proprietary software, only programmers, obviously from CAPS, can provide the maintenance and upkeep to the Dynac system. So we are awarding this contract to them in the amount of $8,862,229.92. There was no MBE or VSBE goal, and we're recommending award to CAPS Trafficcom USA in the amount of $8,884,230. $884,230. Thank you.
Any questions?
I'll make a motion.
Well, actually, just
Oh, remember,
one
Rich.
question. So since this was sole source, how do we get comfortable that this is a fair and reasonable price?
Yes, we did do an estimate. I have to pull that up. We did do a bid justification and determined it to be fair and reasonable.
Okay. Any other questions?
I just want to make
Yes, sir.
one comment. I mean, it is for about 5 years, so it's not, you're not dumping all that money there in 1 year.
Thank you. Anything else? Member Cox, did you? Oh, you make a motion? Oh, yeah,
make
I'm
a
sorry.
motion to approve.
Member Ganjemi, I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Contract passes. At this time, Member Von Paris will recuse himself for MDTA 2020-02 ITS Electrical Design System Services. I'll give him a moment to clear the deck. Is he good? Okay. Ma'am, you may proceed.
Okay, thank you. I'm presenting contract number 2020-02, IT Electrical Design. This contract is awarding 4 contracts for AE contract number 3077, 3078, 3079, and 3080. All contracts are in the amount of $4,250,000. The first contract is going to Rummel, Klepper, and Kyle Whitney, Reckart and Associates. The second is Jacobs Engineering Group, Inc. The third, Mead Hunt, Inc. and WSP USA. And the fourth, Dewberry Engineering, Inc., Whitney, Bailey, Cox, and Magnani. This was advertised on October 13th of 2020. The anticipated notice to proceed date is January 1st of 2022, with a contract duration of 5 years. There was a 23% MBE goal and a 1% VSBE goal, and all firms have met those goals, and there were no protests received on these contracts.
Okay.
Are there any questions?
Questions?
Make a motion that we approve this award.
Motion by Member Rosen, second by Member Gaines. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Oh, sorry, I keep forgetting you're on. Okay, motion carries unanimously. With that, we'll await Member Von Paris's return. Next up, Donna will still be here with us to be procurement report on open contracts. So he'll be in, he's right behind her. Welcome back, sir. We are now on to item number 3.
All right, my final item is an open contracts report. I'm happy to report that we have 13 memorandums of understanding in the amount of $7,948,703. We have 67 architect and engineering contracts in the amount of $775,600,000. 53 construction contracts in the amount of $2,082,958,961. We have 28 maintenance contracts in the amount of $26,602,147. 28 services contracts in the amount of $36,589,577. And 29 IT contracts in the amount of $115,573,450. For a total contracts of 218 active contracts in the amount of $3,045,272,841. We have invoiced or paid $1,716,000 of those amounts, and we have a remaining balance of $1,005,169,118. And I'll be happy to provide you those numbers in writings for your records.
Okay.
Are there any questions about our open contracts report? Okay.
Mary, oh, sorry. That's just an update, right?
It's
Yes,
just
no
an
approval.
update.
Yeah.
Yes, a
It's the right
quarterly
call for-
update.
it's the right call for a motion on your update.
Yep.
But with no other questions, we will thank you.
Thank you.
And next on the agenda is agenda item number 4, the third generation electronic toll collection update, and it's Mr. Will Pines. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, members, chairman. For the record, this is Will Pines. I'm Will Pines, Chief Operating Officer for the MDTA. So this is, as Sean mentioned, this is the monthly reoccurring project update for the 3G program, providing operational updates. There are plans to provide additional updates on revenue. It's my understanding at next month's board meeting. So jumping right into the presentation, we've been talking about this slide here. The negotiations related to the developing modification continues. As we discussed previously, the schedule and modification negotiations are underway with both of the vendors. The back office is continuing to work their schedule according to the plan with the agile release schedule that they provided. Those sprints that are on a 2-week release schedule right now are planned to be finished next spring. Most of the releases to date have focused on fixing newly identified issues that were higher priority and issues that impact our MDTA customer service centers, that's for in-person visits, and the customer information center that's TransCore's call center. The contractor is making sure that they expect to resolve all of those tickets by the end of 2022. That was their original schedule, and they've backed that down to the spring based on the negotiations that we've had with them. Since providing their schedule, they've successfully met all of the deliveries of releases to date, so they are on schedule with their release plan. They, in fact, released a new update last night, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. We are, as noted previously, in prior months, we're negotiating a non-compensable time extension, and we'll also add funds to the contract to deal with the change to all electronic tolling statewide and to deal with the backlog quantity changes. Again, the contracts were originally prepared assuming a cash model at many of our facilities, and so that needs to change to account for the backlog. These contracts, again, will require both board, MDTA board, the Board of Public Works, and do-it approval, and we've received the do-it approval to negotiate those modifications and to move forward. So, you know, some of the members may have more experience dealing with mods. I know I keep talking about this month to month. The negotiations with both contractors, they do take a while. So we are advancing it, and they are progressing their schedules consistent with what we've been discussing. But to actually get all of the terms and conditions exactly right to take it to the board will take some time. So we expect that this would go to the board next spring. So what do we focus on? The key focus areas. I'm very happy to report that highway speed all electronic tolling went live at our JFK facility this past Tuesday. Man, some of you may have driven through that already. So that's a big accomplishment and brings the safety benefits of highway speed all electronic tolling to one more of our facility. And with that completion, we have only 3 facilities remaining with the needed conversions at the Fort McHenry Tunnel and Nicebridge and BHT, where Fort McHenry Tunnel and Nicebridge are both underway right now and plan to convert next year in 2022. We also continue to close out artifacts on the reports and documentation. That's kind of an ongoing thing. Some of the documents are living documents that as they do these sprint releases that we're talking about, they have to document how the system works once those new code fixes are put in place. Again, backlog is probably our biggest focus, working that backlog. We have a lot of discussions on how to make sure that it's posted from the lane side vendor to the back office, how to get it posted to accounts timely, how to make sure we're not overextending our customers, how to make sure that the revenue is collected in a timely fashion. That's a big generator of the call center volume, and so we spend a lot of our time trying to work with managing that backlog. We also are ensuring proper information from the lane side is going to the back office to ensure that customers are told correctly, and any issues that are found, we are prioritizing these to the front of the pile. We're also working closely with the vendors to identify any system issues to make sure that they're meeting their KPIs and that any issues that are occurring, maintenance is addressed very timely so that they don't have any kind of issues that impact customers. We did have some underperformance on certain KPIs, and so system approval was not granted to the lane side vendor, and additional testing is being generated right now to work them through to get to that system acceptance. This also included getting them to have resolution of their QA/QC structures. And again, a big effort is just making sure that as we move into full operations and maintenance on these contracts, that MDTA Finance, IT, and Operation clearly has our respective roles delineated for the contract administration for this project. Getting to the call center, we have had call volumes continue to be very high, in excess of an hour and a half at times. From a risk tracking standpoint, this is probably our biggest risk. We are closely tracking the metrics. We do get daily updates on what the calls were for each day, and we're working closely with the vendors to try to make improvements wherever possible. Examples of that, the IVR system has been improved to help focus on call issues. As we track what the call issues are, we're updating the IVR to prioritize what we're hearing are the problems. And again, backlog is the biggest concern right now. Additionally, there is a call feature available so that customers don't have to wait on hold. They can receive a call back. That's available between the hours of 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. Monday through Friday, and on Saturdays, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. So if they call in, they ask for a call back, they press the button, they get put into a queue, they can hang up, and we'll call them back during those hours. There does need to be a time limit on that because you can't have the service center run 24/7 and calling people at midnight. So we do have that time window there to make it a reasonable callback time from when they get put on the hold list. Again, backlog processing is the major driver for the call volume at this point. As noted on the slides, you can see that as the mailing backlog totals increase, the volume has significantly increased. So we really started mailing NOTDs in force in July of last year, and we can see that last month in October, we received 60,000 more phone calls that month than in the month of August, which directly correlates to this increasing volume of mailings going out. There were nearly 160,000 total calls to the call center during the month of October. Since the call center opened, there have been a lot of challenges with retention and hiring. They originally started in April with 160 employees, and that fell to 60 employees by August. The retention continues to be a concern, though, where they've lost employees, and in the month of October, they lost 35 employees. As of November 1st, they had 82 CEIC representatives in place. However, a number of the employees servicing every day depends on vacations and time off and other things as well. So that's a big challenge with hiring and training up employees to get them in place to just even keep up with retention. And we've talked to other agencies. Dealing with staffing problems has been a challenge across the nation, particularly in call centers, but I mean, I'm sure all of you, we were talking about our leadership meeting the other day, how we're having our own challenges with hiring, and everywhere you drive, you see sign-on bonuses at Wendy's and Royal Farms, and across the board, nationally, hiring is a big challenge right now, and this call center is not exempt from that. We do, however, initially we had a lot of calls that were generated from website issues, but these sprint releases are really focused on trying to fix issues that generate that. And some of you, we even know about credit cards, and we've made those improvements. Would encourage you to take a look at the website and see how that's been improved. Some examples that have gone into place since the last board meeting. At last board meeting, I gave you updates on things that have been improved at the prior to the prior board meeting. Since this board meeting, the website had defect fixes to show that await transactions on the summary screen and allow for searching by the transaction date. The new website alerts are available to stop duplicate payments and to make sure that CCU transactions are not included on the website amount. Somebody's escalated to CCU, they need to be handled separately through them because of the fees that are associated with the central collections unit processing. For unregistered, we also are looking at, this is an example where call center impacts are driving how we operate. They added a hint for unregistered video toll customers that when they go on to pay, sometimes if you recently move, you might think you're using your new zip code, but you haven't updated the MVA. So we provide a hint to suggest to use the old zip code if it's not working. So things like that kind of connect back to the call center, we are updating on the website as well. So that's just a very small cross section of the types of improvements that have been made, but those are ongoing in those 2-week sprint schedules. Related to backlog, as of yesterday, we're up to 19.8 video transactions posted to customers' accounts, allowing for them to pay electronically to receive an early payment discount. To receive that discount, they must pay online prior to when we actually incur the expense for the mailing. So the savings that we have, we pass on to them. If they don't pay before we mail, then that discount goes away. That total, that 19.8, includes both the current and the backlog of video transactions. As of 11/10, we're up to 7.7 million NOTD transactions mailed. We've collected 7.1 million in early payments and 18 million on NOTD payments. Mailings have commenced for customers with greater than 25 NOTDs. If you recall, we did issue buck slips to them to give them advance notice and to encourage early payment. That was successful. We did get a number of early payments from the buck slips, but we do need to proceed with the mailing. So they got about a 2-month period of additional opportunity to pay, given the fact that they have larger accounts with us now, that they have more NOTDs. The NOTD and citation mailings will continue, and the call center challenges that we experience we expect to be there as long as that backlog is in place. Control runs continue for escalations to Central Collections Unit and the MVA, and we're working through some details as we identify issues with the control runs, and in discussions with CCU, those get paused. We work kind of back and forth, making sure that everybody's happy with how those are processing. Last but not least, we continue to use that metering strategy with issuing the notices of toll due and the ICC AVI or Easy Pass tolls according to that backlog plan. We still anticipate completing the posting to accounts by the summer of 2022. Again, this is the date of posting to accounts, while the mailings and revenue will follow the postings. Some of the away agency transactions or out-of-state transactions, the postings will lag because we will post to the out-of-state entity, but they have the responsibility to post to the customer downstream of that. So that's kind of out of our control once it gets turned over to them. We have currently approximately 73% complete on the Easy Pass transponder-based backlog processing. That's 13.5 million transactions have been sent to the back office, and 38% complete on video backlog, with around 10.7 million transactions sent to the back office. So earlier when I talked about that 19.8, that's total with both current and backlog. These numbers that I'm reporting are specifically related to the backlog. And again, key issue, I can't emphasize this enough, I've said it probably 3 times already, but the backlog is really our main driver with customer service issues right now that's generating the biggest call volume to the call center. So with that, I'm happy to open up any questions.
Sorry, yeah. Member Von Paris.
Okay. Just a comment. I think that I appreciate always your report. I look forward to it. I think that investing in the website and fixing some of the issues that we have for it is very important. Drive traffic to that, pressure as we can off the call center. Also, as it relates to the call center, I guess with to try to get their full attention. I understand some of the challenges with staffing, so I just want to. I'm sure that we're taking appropriate action to try to keep the vendors apprised of this and aware of our concerns, and to try to escalate it within their organization to get even better results.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things. We meet bi-weekly weekly with both vendors and call centers stats, and the daily stats that we get is discussed at every meeting. Recently, TransCore brought on a subcontractor, Doll America, which procurement approved as an authorized subcontractor for them. They have 35 representatives that are being trained to onboard through that subcontractor, and so it's our hope that that will bring some stability with retention by using this outside call center to help support. And concurrently, we've made it all the way up to the CEO level. We've been working with them to make it clear that they need to continue their hiring in addition to this subcontractor level. So we're working very closely with them on a very regular basis to try to get this call volume under control. But again, retention is a big issue. Their pay structure, their incentives, the hiring bonuses, everything is there that we see at the Wendy's and the Royal Farm. So it's kind of hard to criticize what they're doing to try to get people onboarded. But the market is just really tough right now.
Okay, thank you, Will. Thanks for all you do and your team
Thank
is
you.
doing.
Well, thank you again. And you may have stated this and I just didn't catch it, but how many NOTDs remain to be posted and mailed? Do you know that?
I do. So I could do the math for you. I did this backwards. So related to the video backlog, now I got to be careful. So video backlog is both notices of toll due, that's actual video transactions that do not include iTolls, and then there's also iTolls. So that's an iToll is primary example is if a customer doesn't mount their transponder correctly in the window, that'll generate what's called an image toll, what we call an iToll. That is included in this number. Okay, so I need to I didn't do the math to give the total, but I can do that quickly. So when I said that there's been 10.7 million transactions sent to the back office, that is both video, pure video, plus iTolls together. Roughly 40% of those transactions are iTolls, 60% are image-based. That's a ballpark, and that's the biggest reason that we have trouble doing cross sections in a really detailed way, because you can't the back office can't tell what it is until it gets checked for an Easy Pass account on the back office side. They do the DMV lookup search to see if the transaction has an Easy Pass or not. So those are estimates with the 60 and 40%. We're 38% complete. So if you just take let me do the math real quick here. 10.7 divided by 0.3. There's 2.81 million total, and we've processed 10.7. So I think to answer your question, there are a little more than 17 million left to process that are video. Again, about 60% of those are image-based video, and 40% are iTolls.
And what is the time period between posting and then mailing?
So that depends. Again, those customers that have more than 25, we've been queuing them out to do the buck slips so that they have more time to do early payment. They are mailing them out at 35,000 envelopes and bundling within the envelope about 3.7 transactions per envelope. So I don't have an exact time frame. I just know the metering plan. They're expecting that the mailing will finish. We're hoping to finish mailings by summer of 2022 in line with the postings. But some of the away agencies, if there are transactions that are iTolls that they do not accept because of the age, we may have to convert them to video, and that would continue mailings beyond that. So I know it's kind of probably a more complicated answer than you wanted, but there's not like, it comes in, it posts to account, and 15 days later we guaranteed mail it. It's really case by case as we work with the away agencies. They kind of are jumping around to keep that 35,000 a day envelopes going out and to meet the requests that we have as we work with the away agencies.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was actually thinking too from the customer's perspective. It's posted to their account and they've got a specific period of time to prepay it before the mailing goes out. What's the estimate of that time period that they have?
Again, it varies. I wish I had one number. It's not as simple as one number. I can try to maybe get you an average number for the next meeting. I understand what you're asking for. What is the estimated total. I mean, one thing that I can say definitively is I know that there are several weeks typically that they are getting of time where they can make an early payment on average, and we're seeing that we are generating a lot of what we call PNOTD payment online before we had to mail them. I think I gave the number here
Yeah.
as so far we've had 7.1 million in early payments. So it's not an inconsequential amount of customers who are getting the benefit of the time of it sitting there and then having the opportunity to pay. But I don't have an average number on what that is. I'll get that for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yep, just one question. Well, thanks for what you're doing. TransCore and Captures, how's the interplay between them? Are they working well together on our behalf?
Yes, so the contract does require a partnering obligation between the two vendors, so that not only that they partner with us, but they coordinate and cooperate effectively. We are in a lot of meetings with them, and they operate professionally. I don't want to pretend that they're not competition and that it's a total love fest, but at the same time, they always operate professionally with us, and I've not encountered any issues in that regard.
Great. Any other questions? Just one quick question. Claire, when you talk about the iTolls, and I think this is what happened to one of my relatives, my father, I believe it was an iToll that picked up the fact that he had a transponder, but we had a transposition on the plate. So I think, is that we consider an iToll because they kicked it out and they were able to discover that, like one of the letters was reversed on the actual license plate, so it didn't match up with the transponder?
So I'm not sure about the case that you're talking about exactly, Sean. I had to look into that a little
Okay.
more.
Yeah.
But the
gotta
most
clear it up.
basic
Yeah.
example,
Yeah.
if you don't have your transponder mounted, let's say you got it stuck underneath your visor or in your cubby and you don't put it out. A lot of people today, now that we have highway speed electronic tolling, right? We get people that say, well, I held it up to the window when I went through where the plaza used to be. Well, that's not what the gantry is anymore, so you're just holding it up to the air.
That's gone.
Right?
Yeah, it's like-
So you got to mount it. That's the bottom line.
Right.
We ask everybody to mount it. If they need to get supplies to mount it, that can be ordered through the website. If it's not mounted, when it goes, the video transaction goes to the back office, the TransCore side, they do a license plate lookup, and if there's a match between the license plate and an account, they'll be charged at an iToll rate, and that's the base rate or what used to be the cash rate. So
Okay.
there's a lot of concerns with iTolls for us because it's a detriment to customers. If they don't have it mounted, they don't get their discount plan savings, they get charged a higher rate. So it's really critical to mount correctly.
Okay, great. Thank you. With that, I see that Chairman Slater has made his way into the room, so are you-
Hey, Sean,
Yeah,
I just want
yeah,
to
yeah,
maybe
Jim.
answer your question a little more the way you asked it. So if I heard you correctly, the customer that you're talking about did not actually put the correct license plate number in the system.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, you're correct. Yes.
They transposed the numbers.
Right.
So we do get criticized for that problem, but keep in mind that it's the customer that inputs that information. So if they do input it incorrectly, obviously their tag will not match up
Right.
with their Easy Pay.
Right.
Correct? And
Correct.
so we run across this now and then where the customer, says, well, I have an Easy Pass account. I put my tag in there. Well, they did, but they put they like you said, transposed numbers or put the wrong number into the system. So it will never match up if they don't do it correctly.
Correct. And the reason I brought that up because I think that I wanted to highlight that because one, the customer takes full responsibility for it because the customer's son, sitting right here, is the one that entered the tag number into the system. But and we both take responsibility for it. But I think that happens a lot. Things like that happen to where the customers for some reason or another, and people transpose numbers all the time, whatever happens, but a lot of times that is a common problem. But I
we
wasn't
did-
sure if that was considered an I toll or not. That's more of a correction, I think, than,
It would be an I toll if they did not have the transponder mounted and the license plate was
But they
correct.
had that.
If they did not have the transponder mounted and the license plate was not correct, then that would just generate a video toll.
gotcha. Okay, very good, thank you. Thanks, Jim. Yeah, I thought you would want to tag on to that a little bit, so I kind of threw it out there for you. With that, Greg,
No problem.
Mr. Chairman, would you like us to take a motion to move the item 6 and 7 up? Okay. All right. For the members of the public, Chairman Slater has returned, or is at the meeting now. So I would ask the indulgence of the board. We would like to entertain a motion to move items number 6 and 7 ahead of item number 5. We can handle those 2 items, and then we'll kick it back when we come back out of closed session. So I'd entertain a motion.
So move.
Member Cox? Second by Member Gaines. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Oh, sorry, I keep forgetting you, Member Carroll. Member Carroll and Jim Ports are on the line, so just for your thing. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Chairman Slater. And sir, a couple things to hand off to you here. Here's where we are on the agenda. Here's where we're on the book. Here is the information for going into closed session and the closed session materials. Okay. Oh, you know what I mean, the closed session.
Thank you so much, and just thank you to everyone that's here and also listening for their indulgence. Thank you, Sean. I'm trying to manage 2 board meetings at one time when the MDTA board meeting and the WMATA board meeting are scheduled at exactly the same time, and both have really important topics on them. So I'm running back and forth to make sure that I'm present, and I have now an alternate on the WMATA board, so that has helped me kind of juggle this a little bit. But thank you all. So at this point, now that we have adjusted the agenda, I am going to turn it over to Carl to talk us through the Phase 1 South American Legion Bridge 270 to I-370 toll setting process and where we are.
Thank you, Chairman, board members. So as a reminder, my name is Carl Chamberlain. I'm a project manager, Division of Planning and Program Development. I'm here today to review with you the public comment summary report for Phase 1 South American Legion Bridge I-270 to I-370 toll rate range setting process. This is the comment summary report for the second public comment period that we just recently held. In addition to that, once we're completed with that, we are also going to be seeking approval for the final recommended proposal. So a couple things just to note real quick before I get started. The summary report was provided to you. It's in your board packet. In addition, we posted it online actually last week, so that way anybody from the public that wanted to take a look at that information was able to do it before this meeting. A little bit different than the last meeting. The last meeting, I think we posted a day up, but again, since this potentially might be the last meeting for this process, we wanted to make sure people had that information ahead of time. There is quite a bit of information here. I've got some notes. Again, just bear with me if I have to refer to my notes or the report as I go. If I'm referring to a particular part of the report, I'll make sure I let you know where I'm referring to. And then one just last note, you'll remember this from last time probably, but we do solicit comments specific to the proposal that's on the table that we're going to be presenting to you. However, people are welcome to provide feedback or comments on anything that they want as part of the public comments process. So what we do is we try to organize the report in a way to filter out the information that is specific to the proposal. And again, we'll go through that information, we'll go through the report. But we do have another section of the report just to report out to the board members and anybody at MDOT in general that is interested in some of those other comments that we hear, because a lot of times they're on either the project as a whole, the P3 program, things like that again, they're still relevant to this, the process and the project, but again, might not be specific to, these 4 elements that we're going to be talking about today. So again, when I go through the report, I'll just make note of that as we go. And again, with that, I'm going to get into the report. So I've got the report in front of me. I'm going to go through. There's some things I'm going to be reading directly from the report. Again, so I'll let you guys know where I'm at. Page 1 is, not page 1, the executive summary is just highlights of everything I'm going to go through. Since I'm doing details here, again, I'm going to skip over the executive summary and the table of comments, table of contents. And with that, I'm going to start on page 1, which is the public comment process. So just a couple of things. We opened the comment period on September 30th, which was the September board meeting with your approval. After that approval, we left it open until October 28th. Which was 3 weeks ago. This was twice as long as the statutory requirement to keep that public comment period open. Again, we want to make sure we give people as much time as possible to provide input on this project as we possibly can. Again, as a reminder, 4 elements that we were seeking comments on: the minimum and maximum toll rate ranges, soft rate caps within those toll rate ranges, the process for escalating toll rate ranges and soft rate caps in the future, as well as toll discounts for certain types of vehicles. I'm going to move on to pages 2 and 3. So of the respondents that provided responses, and you'll see in those 2 figures, we had 95 total responses, and 91% of those were from a comment form, and 9% of those were from email. So that online comment form we have was the most popular way of commenting and the easiest way for people to comment. You'll notice from page 3, we actually break down comments by number of respondents. So that's the first number, but we also break down comments within those. An example of this is somebody submits a comment form, but within that comment form, there's obviously 4 different proposals. If they provide one comment on each one of those proposals, we actually break that down into individual comments as well. So that's why you'll see the sort of difference between a respondent, which is either an email or a comment form, versus the actual comments. Again, we try to break that information out. So that's why you see that information in there reported that way. We utilize a third-party comment system. Again, you might remember this from last time. It's called Public Input Community Engagement Software. This allows us to streamline the post-processing results. Essentially, that comment form goes directly into that system, as well as emails are directed right into that system. Back when we did the testimony, same thing. All that testimony went directly into that system. Just made it easier for us to go through these comments and provide the summary for you guys as well. And then one other thing that we also did, besides just seeking comment on the actual piece of the proposal, we also asked some questions about just getting some context for the people that are actually providing comments. And that's what the section I'm going to go through next. So I'll go through it quickly because the information was pretty similar during this comment period as it was for the first comment period. So that respondent data analysis, that's on page 4. Basically, the majority of, again, I'm just going to skim through this. The majority of comments, as expected, came from Montgomery County. That's where this project is proposed to be. So that's, again, to be expected. And you'll see that on that map on page 5. Page 6, just a couple of figures here. Majority of respondents travel within the project limits 3 or more times per week, and the majority of respondents utilize CC Pass as well. So again, quick data points here, but again, provides us context. We're seeking comments on this proposal in a specific area, and it's good to know that the feedback that we're getting is also specific to those people in that area. But again, that was pretty similar to what we heard last time, so I don't want to spend too much time going through that. The next part that I'm going to go through starts on page 7. This is the comment summary and analysis. This is really the bulk of what I want to talk about today, and really the detail that I want to get into. So hope you're okay with me skimming over some of that other stuff. One thing I do want to remind you of is how this section is broken down. So within each section, so we have each part of the proposal within here, which is 4 different sections because there's 4 different parts of the proposal. And then within that, you'll see 2 different sections. The first one is called comment form results. So within the comment form, we gave people the ability to either approve, disapprove, or provide a neutral opinion on that. So they could check a box within that. And that first set of results is those check boxes. And then the second set of results, which is under what's called all comments, is where if somebody actually wanted to provide a comment within the comment box, that's where we actually process those results. The reason we have it separated out this way is partly because if somebody submits an email to us, it would be subjective of us to try to determine whether that's approval, disapproval, or neutral of that comment. So we didn't actually do that for anybody that didn't check one of those boxes. But because those check boxes we think is important data, we still want to report that information out to you. So that's why it's broken out sort of 2 different ways for you guys. Okay, with that, I'm going to move right over to the report, and I'm going to read some of this data right up from the report for you guys, just so it's on the record and you guys are clear what we heard. Before I get into this, I will just say sort of generally the themes and the data that we got this time around in the second public comment period, very similar to what we heard in the first public comment period. So there was consistency between what we heard the first time and what we're hearing the second time. So for the first one, I'm going to go through minimum and maximum toll rate ranges. This is on page 7. So first, for the comment form results, there were 88 comment forms received. 85 respondents checked a box noting whether they supported, which was 15%, or neutral, which was 10%, or in opposition, which was 75% for those ranges. And then within all comments, again, we got 164 total comments, but only 33 provided opinion on this part of the proposal. And the most common themes that we heard, which was similar to the last time around, is general opposition to tolls and that the recommended toll rate ranges were too high. I'm going to move on to page 8, which is the next section, soft rate caps within the minimum and maximum toll rate ranges. For the comment form results, of those 88 comment forms that we received, 72 selected a box for whether they support, in this case was 25%, were neutral, 14%, or in opposition, 61%. And then for all comments, of the 164 total comments that we received, only 10 of those comments provided an opinion regarding the recommended soft rate caps. And the most common themes, from those comments that were developed were general opposition to dynamic tolls, and that it was unclear how the soft rate cap will be implemented. I'm going to move on to page 9 to talk about the annual escalation adjustments. Of the 88 comment forms received, 75 respondents selected a checkbox noting whether they support, in this case 11%, were neutral 13%, or in opposition 76%. And for all comments, of the 164 total comments received, only 17 comments were provided an opinion regarding the escalation, and the most common themes were that escalation should not be automatic, escalation should be limited to the rate, or that escalation should be limited to the rate of inflation. In each one of these sections, I probably should have noted this earlier, after that we also provide a couple of sample comments to give you a flavor of those themes, but I also want to mention that we also post all of the raw data from those comments as well to the website, so anybody that wants to, while reviewing this report, go through and look through every comment that we received, that information is available to them if they want to review that. Last thing I'm going to go through from the proposal on page 10 was the toll discounts. So from the comment form results, of the 88 comment forms received, 75 respondents selected a checkbox noting whether they support, in this case 56%, were neutral 8%, or in opposition 36% for those discounts. And of the 164 total comments received, 26 provided an opinion about the toll discounts. Most common theme was overall support for the recommended discounts. So this was the more positive of the proposals we had on the table. But there was concern with the vehicle types and the HOV classifications about who does and does not receive a discount in this case. So with that, again, that is the sort of the meat of the summary and the analysis that we did. The next section, as I mentioned, we did try to separate these sort of other public comments that we got. Again, we want to make sure we report out all information for transparency to the board members as well as to the public. So I'm just going to go through this section really quick. This is on page 11, or starting on page 11. So 78 comments, which is about half of the comments, are what we categorize as other comments. The most common theme, which was similar to the one of the things I did for this is actually compare this to the last report that we did, and all the themes were the same, but I'll go through them again. General opposition to tolls in general, and that they are economically unfair. The next most common theme was respondents who disagreed with the involvement of a private company in managing these tolls. And then the next most common theme that received, and again in the sort of like other comments, was that tolls in general do not fix congestion. So again, another thing that we heard. The next section of the report, one other way that we wanted to segregate the data that we have here, again, to make it most useful to the board members when they're reviewing this information, was try to filter out any recommendations that were what we were considered very specific to the actual proposal. So we, have a toll rate range here on the table. If somebody wanted to provide an example of a different range or different dollar value that they wanted to propose for us, and again, anything like that was very specific. I'll give some examples here. Again, we try to just segregate that out just to make it more useful for the board members to review this information. So again, that starts on page 14. And the first one is a real, and I'll just hit on the first one because it's a good example of this. So under minimum and maximum tolls, one of the comments that we received was, and it's that first bullet there, subject to American Legion Bridge toll KISS, so always keep it simple, silly. Charge 50 cents for every vehicle going south, period. Everybody pays. But two-way trip is only 50 cents per round trip, or better yet, charge $1 for the bridge from everyone and forget the toll road fees altogether. So again, anytime somebody provided something specific to us, we wanted to make sure you guys were aware of some of these specific recommendations, just pulled that out in a separate section to make it easier for review. Again, I'm not going to go through all those. Just another, again, example to make this a little bit more clear. On page 15 under escalation, and somebody provided the comment, not to exceed 1% increase with the possibility of no increase. So again, we're proposing a specific formula for how we do the escalations. Some people want to provide a different specific recommendation for how we should do that escalation. And with that, that's the meat of the report. There are a couple of other things that I just want to make sure that you're aware of, which is some of the appendices. Again, just additional information here. So within the appendix of the report, we provided a copy of the comment form that was used, so that that can be referenced there. In Appendix B, we also included that geographic breakdown of comments in a table form. Appendix C is a summary of the public notices that were provided, so how we try to communicate this information with the public. And lastly, Appendix D is just a more comprehensive breakdown of what I actually just went over in that recommendations to the public. So for those recommendations, those were recommendations that were specific to the proposal on the table, but there were some other recommendations that, again, might have been for the P3 program or other things. Again, we just pulled those out in appendix just to make it clear and easy for people to review that information. But again, all the raw data is going to be posted online as well, so if somebody wanted to scroll through every single comment we received, they can find that information online. With that, that is the completion of my review of the summary report, and I will take any questions or comments anybody might have about that summary.
Thank you, Carl. Maybe I'll start. I have just kind of a few questions. I was trying to kind of decipher through, as I was reading the raw comments and digesting them over the last few days and weeks, but how many total commenters were there? So I saw comments, but I'm trying to figure out how many people actually commented.
Yeah, so that would have been that, I believe it was I'm just going to scroll back through here real quick and get into that table so I report the right number to you. So 95 total.
95 total.
Individual, and that's that breakdown of what we called respondents, and so it was 88 comment forms and 7 emails. So that's what we call a respondent. We think of as a person providing a comment, and then of those, again, we break those down into the individual categories. So there were 164 total comments broken out within those different respondents.
When I read them, some things kind of stood out to me, but some didn't. Some were surprising to me, some were not. One of the things that kind of struck me, and I couldn't really kind of gather the why on it, was 36% of the people were opposed to toll discounts.
Sure.
And so when I read the comment, that kind of struck me. So I was trying to read through, and I saw that some people were opposed to motorcycles. We even got some that were opposed to certain buses, but not other kinds of buses. And so it kind of struck me as a little bit strange, but certainly interesting. Did anything on that why stand out to you at all?
I think what you said, it tended to be the case that if somebody was against a discount, it was more the way that we were proposing it. So it was, again, specific to, hey, why are you proposing motorcycles? Or on the HOV3, a lot of what we heard was there should be HOV2, those types of things. So so that's where, again, you would think, people like discounts, why would people be in opposition? I think it was more to the specifics within the individual proposal that we're responding to. But just from a numbers perspective, that I think we saw similar numbers the last time around. It was, in the 50 plus 60%, were either an approval or what do we say, neutral, the last time around. So we did see sort of consistency across them. Of course, we had, a lower sample size this time around. I think we had 666 total comments last time versus 164 this time around, and it was a shorter period, so I'm sure that influenced some of the information that we got back.
Absolutely. I know that HOV2 conversation has come up a lot in the comments. And,
sure.
I think the HOV3 that is in place in Virginia on the other side of the bridge has really, the data shows that it has really influenced the behavior, the travel behavior. People, HOV2 may not look like it's where you want to be, but the 3 has really made more carpools. They've added transit service, and I think we're fully intending on doing the same type of thing to increase that and the amount of people that go through that corridor. But
and that, of course, also benefits the general purpose lanes as well.
Absolutely. Did we get any comments in the last week since we posted those latest results? Did anything new come in?
No.
So generally, kind of what I was seeing is it's general opposition to toll. We didn't get a lot of comments on the specific rates themselves other than...
Yeah, you're correct.
Okay. No further questions for me. Any questions from the board? Okay. Thank you, Carl. Do I have a
Yeah, not a problem.
motion to approve?
Well, so for this part, we don't need
sorry?
to approve this
Okay.
report. I figured that's what Natalie was going to say.
Okay.
What we're going to do now is I don't know, Natalie, if you want me to do this or you want to do it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So at this point, I'll open it up to see if there is any public comment. We have no individuals signed up for public comment. We're good. Just want to take a minute and thank you, Carl, and the whole team. I know Deb just came in. I know this process is a lot of work. It's very intense. It's very collaborative and engaging, and it takes a lot of work to get us here. But I do think what we have in front of us is a good proposal.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and one thing that we always say is it certainly does take a good amount of effort to put together this type of a process, and because we like to get as many comments as possible. And I think in this case, between the first comment period and this one, I think we did get a pretty good response. And so we were happy with the outreach that we did, and again what we heard back. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Carl. So do I have a motion to approve the final toll rate structure?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
What? Okay.
No, you're
I'm
good.
sorry, I don't have any of that in front of me, so.
No, you're good. And really this, anytime we have a big approval like this, we want to make sure, for the record that we read out exactly what the proposal is. For this one, I will just read this directly. It's about a page. You can just bear with me. And I'll read this out and then we'll hold it for approval. So. And I believe this is in your board book as well, this page. So this is the approval to accept staff's recommended action, which is the recommended toll rate ranges. The recommended action, which is the recommended toll rate ranges for Phase 1 South American Legion Bridge, I-270 to I-370, will consist of minimum toll rates, soft toll rate caps, and maximum toll rates for the hot lanes. Toll rate ranges will be set to ensure the hot lanes operate to established operational metrics and provide managed lane users with a fast and more reliable trip. The rates will also include annual escalation factors to ensure that toll rate ranges are adequate to cover the full term of the P3 phase developer agreement, which is anticipated to be 50 years. The recommendation also includes a free passage discount that will be granted along Phase 1 South American Legion Bridge, I-270 to I-370 hot lanes for HOV 3+ buses and motorcycles. Toll rates will be set dynamically, meaning they could change up to every 5 minutes based on traffic volumes in the hot lanes to provide customers who choose to pay a toll a faster and more reliable trip. The actual toll rates will change based on real-time traffic at each tolling point. The following encompasses the full recommended action. Minimum toll rates. The minimum toll rate is the lowest toll rate per mile that will be charged within any tolling segment for the hot lanes, or the lowest total toll in a vehicle will pay regardless of how far they travel. The minimum toll rate is intended to cover toll capture, processing, and collection costs. Next part, soft rate caps. Soft rate cap is a toll rate amount that can only be exceeded when at least one of the following thresholds are met within a given tolling segment during the preceding 5-minute period. The average traffic volume exceeds 1,600 passenger car equivalent vehicles per hour per lane, where the average speed in a tolling segment is below 50 miles per hour. The soft rate cap will always be lower than the maximum toll rate and can be exceeded only temporarily to provide customers who choose to pay a toll a faster, more reliable trip. The soft rate cap will only be exceeded until the throughput and speed performance targets are achieved, and then the toll rate will gradually return to the soft rate cap or below. The next proposal, maximum toll rates. The maximum toll rate is the highest per mile toll rate that may be charged within any tolling segment for the hot lanes. The actual per mile rate paid by customers is responsive to real-time traffic. The maximum rates cannot be exceeded under any circumstance. The maximum rate will only be realized under conditions where the soft rate cap is exceeded, which would be during times of deteriorated performance. In extremely rare circumstances, when traffic demand is very high and customers are experiencing decreased speeds in a given tolling segment, the toll rate may reach the maximum toll rate. Toll rate is determined on a segment-by-segment basis. The maximum toll rate is required for the most congested toll segments and likely would not come into effect for many of the segments. Escalation, the next section. MDTA staff recommends the minimum and maximum per mile toll rates, soft rate caps, minimum tolls, and unregistered video surcharge escalate annually. The adjustments are necessary to ensure the toll rates will keep up with the growing traffic demand for the hot lanes, annual inflation, and the goal of providing a faster, more reliable trip for customers who choose to pay the toll. The minimum per mile toll rate and minimum toll would be escalated based on inflation only. Next section, discounts. In addition, the recommended action includes discounts for qualifying vehicles, including HOV 3+ buses and motorcycles. And lastly, before I do the last statement, on the next page, page 3, is also a table of the full proposal and summary of that proposal as discussed today. I'm not going to walk through every single number in there, but again, that is for the public record. So lastly, recommended action, we are seeking the board's approval to accept the final recommendation.
I move for approval, Mr. Chairman. Member Cox.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Board.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We've now reached a closed session portion of our agenda. The closed session is scheduled for the board members and the designated staff. Per Maryland Open Meetings Act, the MDTA Board will meet in closed session under the General Provisions Article Section 3-305B9 to consider matters related to the collective bargaining negotiations between the state and FOP number 34. I'll vote now to go into closed session. Do I have a motion to go into closed session? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We are now in closed session. Thank you.
No copy, that's all. Okay, good morning. The time is now 11:20 a.m., and the board has completed its closed session portion of the meeting. Again, my name is Sean Powell. I'll be chairing the remainder of today's meeting as Chairman Slater had to step away. And for the record, there were no actions taken in the closed session that would require ratification. So with that, we were going to shift back to agenda item number 5, quarterly review of investment strategy and performance. Alan Garman, you're up, sir.
Great, thank you. In the interest of time, I will be as brief as possible. This is the quarterly investment report for the trailing 12-month period through September. This was reviewed in greater detail with the Finance Committee at the meeting earlier this month. The Finance Committee supported the continuation of the current investment strategies for all accounts. I think most importantly, the portfolios conformed to the policy limitations during the period. We adhered to the board-approved strategies, and the general account's total return performance was commensurate with the benchmark index. For the M&O reserve, we've been in the midst of a transitioning period, so you'll see that the performance fell essentially between the old benchmark and the new benchmark's return. As a bit of history, the board had approved its strategy change back in February of 2020. The pandemic hit, and we came back to the board the very next month and said, we don't want to change strategy in the midst of this market volatility and all-time low interest rates. And so then we came back in November and recommended a change in strategy for only the M&O reserve. So since that time, since essentially December of 20, we've been slowly transitioning that portion of the unrestricted reserves to a longer-term benchmark. And that was essentially to extend the maturity of that from average maturity from about 3 years to 7.5 years. For all of our accounts, we either have a matched funding approach or a total return approach in terms of strategy. So the matched funding accounts are the capital account and the operating account and our bond service accounts. So we essentially just match the investment maturities to known cash flows. And for the reserves, we have a total return approach, so we have considered the risk-return trade-off of those longer-term structures. So the strategy for the general account is the same. It's 1 to 5 year benchmark, so we have a 3-year average maturity for that portfolio. The M&O reserve has been in transition to this new benchmark with an average maturity of approximately 7.5 years. We finished that transition in October, so starting in November, we'll have a better benchmark. We should perform in line with the new index. For the trailing 12-month period, and this is a function of the rising interest rate environment and the bond prices falling, the general account's return was negative 0.22%, and that was very much in line with the index's return of negative 0.23%. The M&O reserve is again transitioning during that period, so the old benchmark was negative 0.23. The portfolio returned a negative 0.75%, and the new index's return was a negative approximately 3.5%. And just a little bit of perspective on where we are with rates is that prior to the last 2 years where we had 4%-ish returns, prevailing yields are around 1%. So for 5 straight years, the portfolio's returned around 1-ish%. And then when rates fell dramatically in 2019 and 2020, we benefited strongly from the mark-to-market upward price adjustments. Now we're in the midst of rising rates, and so the mark-to-market is pushing down the returns. In fact, we'll probably end up with a negative return this fiscal year. I think the important thing to note is that your average return over multi-year periods is going to be essentially close to where prevailing rates are, so around 1%. So even though we had high returns the last 2 years and potentially a negative return this year, you can expect multi-year average returns, closer to 1%. I guess I would just close it by saying that the Finance Committee concurred with the recommendation to maintain the current strategy for all of the accounts, and so we're seeking the board's approval to essentially maintain the current strategies.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Are there any questions for Alan? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the quarterly review of investment strategy and performance. Thank you. I have a motion by Member Ardinger.
Second.
Second by Member Von Paris. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's about 5 in a row. So apparently there are no opposed, so the motion is unanimous. Okay, so items 6 and 7 are finished. So next up will be Chantel Green, item number 8, traffic revenue forecast and an update. So Chantel, take it away.
Thank you. Good morning. So enclosed within your materials, you should find a summary memo, a copy of the updated TNR report, as well as the presentation document. For purposes of this morning's presentation, I'll be working from the presentation document, which is the last attachment under, I believe it's tab 8 in your materials. So I'd like to direct your attention to slide 3 of the presentation documents. So system-wide, the updated traffic and revenue forecast reflects a $134 million increase in revenue over the 2021 to 2027 forecast period. And that's due to better than anticipated recovery from COVID-19 as well as commercial vehicle growth. Moving to the bottom of the slide, because of the stronger than anticipated commercial vehicle growth, no COVID-19 impacts are anticipated for the legacy facility commercial vehicles, which is reflective of the $114 million increase over the forecast period. Turning to slide 4, after accounting for the revenue shift from fiscal year 2021 to 2022, due to the delay in ICC billings, revenues for the ICC and ETL are generally in line with the previous forecast. And moving to the bottom of the slide, administrative toll revenues are higher than anticipated as a result of cashless tolling. Turning to slide 5, it provides a comparison of the pre-COVID-19 forecast to the most recent TNR forecast. As you can see, COVID-19 has directly impacted the authority's revenues to the tune of about $400 million when compared to the previous forecast. So while the current forecast reflects higher revenues than the previous forecast last year due to the improved stabilization from COVID-19, it's important to note that the authority is not flush with cash and is continuing to manage through the loss of this amount over the forecast period. Before I conclude my remarks, you all just heard from Alan with the quarterly TNR presentation, and you'll note that there's some additional quarterly quarterly presentations for the budget, as well as the capital budget coming up. There is no quarterly TNR presentation you may have noted within your materials this month. This is a result of staff resources. We've had a lot of competing priorities, including the completion of the financial statements. As such, we weren't able to delve into that particular item as warranted. So it's our intent to come back to you next month at the board meeting and to provide you with that quarterly update of traffic and revenues. So your understanding with respect to that is appreciated.
Great.
And with that concludes my remarks, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions for Chantel? All right, thank you. Next up, we're going to have the next 3 items will be approval items. Next up is item number 9, Jeffrey Brown. He'll be presenting the fiscal year 2023 preliminary operating budget. So that will be approval item number 1. So there you are. Welcome, sir.
Hi. Thanks. Okay, For the record, my name is Jeffrey Brown, Budget Director for the MDTA, and the purpose for my presentation today is to request a contingent approval from the board for the full year 2023 preliminary budget. The preliminary budget for full year 2023 represents a return to more normal operations. The proposed operating budget is $359.1 million, which represents a $1.7 million or 0.5% decrease versus the full year 22 budget. The key driver for this is the completion of the Easy Pass backlog, which drives down the operating expenses in total. In looking at the budget, we've broken it into three major buckets. There's mandatory expenses, which are typically personnel expenses. There's some discretionary additions to the budget, and finally some additional reductions to the budget as well. For the mandatory increases, that represents a $5.6 million increase. The major changes are step and grade changes for the police, which account for $1.5 million. Both Social Security costs and health and retiree health costs had rate increases. That resulted in health increases of $1.2 million and Social Security of $0.3 million. In addition, law enforcement operations pension system, officers' pension system had an increase of $1 million. In addition, we budgeted for an expected $500 bonus for sworn and civilian employees, which increased the budget by $0.9 million, and a 1% COLA for civilian employees, which increased the budget $0.6 million. The remaining variance was for accrued leave, which is expectation of retirements, which increased the budget of $0.1 million. In addition, the operating budget had $7.7 million in additional discretionary spending. The big variances are IT services and computers, which accounted for $2.4 million. Of this, IT services, which is Object 0865, had an increase of $2.2 million, and that's due to higher labor costs in the consulting and technical services contracts. In addition, there was purchases for computers of Tough Books for the Maryland State Police, which increased the budget $0.2 million. In addition, there was a $2.2 million increase in engineering costs, which is Object 0807. If you recall, in past budgets like last year, COVID-19 was a big impact to those budgets. It impacted both revenue, and we also took significant decreases on the expense side to try to match up the decrease in revenue. And this is one area where we had a large decrease in the budget. So this year represents going through the enabling. We had deferred maintenance expenses, which we did not do. We are now doing those in these engineering costs, which were deferred under the previous budget. So that's what increased the budget $2.2 million. In addition, there were some other emplacement costs, which increased $0.7 million. This is due to replenishment of personal protective equipment. Typically, they last about 10 years, and we're reaching the end of the cycle for this equipment. Building repairs and maintenance, Object 0812 increased $0.4 million. This is work associated with the Curtis Creek Drawbridge maintenance, additional Bay Bridge automation work and eastbound deck work, and additional contractual increases for virtual weigh stations across the state. Security services, 0823, increased $0.4 million. This is associated with the new Vitasys contract, which drove this increase. Management services increased $0.3 million for some architectural and engineering work. Transponders, Object 0951, had an increase of $0.2 million due to expected increased need. And insurance had some increases as well of $0.2 million, but they were within the range of normal rate increases. The remaining $0.9 million is spread across about approximately 43 sub-objects. Moving on to the additional reduction, or not additional, but the reductions to the budget, which was $15 million. The big driver, as mentioned earlier, is the Easy Pass Service Center costs, had a reduction of $10 million. This is driven by the expectation that the backlog would be completed. In addition, it does include the expected run rate volume and run rates going forward. So there's two aspects: the expected run rate going forward in the future, offset by the completion of the backlog costs. That resulted in a $10 million reduction. In addition, fiscal services, 0829, is $1 million lower and has two components: the Easy Pass retail fees of $0.9 million. Again, backlog processing is completed, and the expected growth rate is incorporated into that number. Fiscal services is down 0.1 million. This is a reflection of going to 2 rating agencies instead of the current 3. There are various IT cost reductions across numerous objects that accounts for 1 million. The drivers of this are eliminations of a web resource, eliminating TCO leads as we use internal resources instead, and reduce contract costs. Rent is lower by 0.4 million as building 2300 is no longer in use, and we do expect overtime to a reduction overtime of 0.4 million as we fill hiring the current vacancies. As those get filled, the requirement for overtime is expected to go down. Both the additional building and maintenance equipment, which is object 1113, and other land vehicles 0730, both reduced 0.3 million respectively. These items tend to be lumpy year to year. It's just based upon current needs. So this reflects the current needs, plus some of the needs are reflected in the capital budget rather than the operating budget. Turnover shows a reduction of 0.3 million. This is in line with historical history, the average rate, expected average rate. And janitorial services had a 0.2 million decrease. The remaining 1 million is spread across 29 sub-objects, and that accounts for the remainder of the reductions. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy at this time to take any questions.
Thank you. Just a quick question on the accrued leave payout, way back on page 2 or 3, whatever it was. Did we see a significant number of retirements or ones that are going to be retiring? I know that this is projected for FY23, but I know that there was talk of a lot of people statewide that were going to be retiring, pulling the trigger by the end of this year. So are we kind of looking at that same?
I haven't looked specific. I mean, I have seen some. I don't know if it's. I can't honestly answer at this point whether that's outside of the normal rate.
Right.
I'd have to go back and look. I mean, I have seen it, but I don't know if it's outside the normal.
Okay, thank you. No, and it just if you find something that because there's always that normal.
Right.
When the time runs out, they're just going to go when they go and take advantage of, for whatever reason, take the annual leave payout on effective December 31st for tax reasons as opposed to the following year or whatever.
Right.
Or January 1st as opposed to the previous year. Okay, that's helpful. I have no other questions. Member Gaines?
Your 2.2 million increase in engineering costs.
Right.
Wouldn't that normally be in the capital budget attached to certain projects?
I really depend upon the rules for the budget. I'd have to look at the specific details, but there's maintenance work and things of that nature. If it doesn't extend the life of the, if it's just normal maintenance work, that would be under an operating budget.
Yeah.
Obviously, if it's something that's going to extend the life or it's a certain level, it'd be capital. But I guess the answer is it depends. I mean, I don't know if it's always necessarily in the capital budget.
I see. Deb, did you have?
Yeah, no, I agree. Our capitalization threshold is $100,000 in 7 years. This has happened to be a topic of conversation we had at Finance Committee. And so sometimes projects don't meet that threshold, or as Jeff said, it doesn't extend the life or improve the asset in some manner.
What about the work on the Bay Bridge? Shouldn't that be attached to a capital budget or project there? It looks like you had cost overruns there. I mean, I don't know if it belongs in the operating budget or not.
Every time there's a project, a task, engineering, OEC, engineering, construction has a process that they work with finance to go through that task and determine whether or not it meets the capitalization threshold or it does not. And so we use that same process either to put it in the operating budget or to record it the way that we need to capitalize it.
Well, it's a cost overrun, so I guess it wasn't in the operating budget. It's got thrown in there later, I guess. I mean, Bay Bridge deck work, isn't that part of a big contract, isn't it? Bay Bridge automation, eastbound deck work, virtual waste station, I don't know, just why does it end up in the operating budget?
Right, so again, it depends on each task and what is being worked on under that task and how that task is put together.
Right.
And we use a flow chart to end up deciding whether it falls into meets the capitalization threshold or not. And so those that don't, for whatever reason, will fall into our operating budget. So an item, deck work, it may not be related to the capital project 2819, the deck. It could be a patch anywhere else in the deck, or a repair that we need to do that is sort of isolated and therefore wouldn't be large enough to meet.
Not part of that project.
Yeah.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the preliminary FY 2023 operating budget. Motion by Member Rosen, do I have a second? Second by Member Gaines. Well, I saw, Member Ardinger, your hand came up first. Second by Member Ardinger. Let's mix it up a little. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, was that an aye, Member Carroll? Okay. I hear no opposition, so the motion is unanimous. Thank you. Okay, next up is item number 10 on your agenda packet. It's another approval item, as I mentioned. Jeannie Marriott will have the final fiscal year 2022 to 2027 Consolidated Transportation Program, or CTP. We'll be approving this, and we just finished our last CTP meeting on Tuesday at the beautiful county of Caroline. So, ma'am, you're up. Yeah, we were right there.
I'm Jeannie Marriott, the Capital Program Manager, and I'm here to ask for your approval of the proposed fiscal year 22 to 27 final CTP. And the final CTP was recommended for approval by the Capital Committee on November 4th and by the Finance Committee on November 9th. The six-year budget in the proposed CTP is $2.8 billion, which reflects a net increase in the six-year budget of $39.3 million. If you turn to attachment 1, CTP comparison tables, draft versus final, you see a breakdown of what went into this increase. In the first line, we see the nice Middleton Bridge. There was a $9.4 million increase in the six-year budget. Line 2 is the I-95 ETL Northern Extension with a $6.8 million increase. Line 3 is the remainder of the CTP without the reserves, a $369 million increase. And then line 4 is the allocated and unallocated reserves, and there was a $345.9 million decrease in the reserves. And then line 5 is 3 and 4 added together, which is really everything except lines 1 and 2, the big projects. And then in line 6, we come down to the total, which is a $39.3 million increase. And if you look over to the 2021 column, you see that this is actually offset by a $39.3 million rollover from fiscal year 21 to the 22 to 27 time period. And that was primarily due to schedule changes in the projects. If we look at attachment number 2, changes from draft to final, this has a breakdown by project. In the first section are new projects that were added, 10 system preservation and 2 enhancement projects that resulted in a $33.8 million increase. Then we move on to projects modified to reflect bids received. There were 2, and that resulted, there were 3. And that resulted in a $22.3 million increase. And there were 2 projects modified to add the construction phase when the design was 60% complete. Construction funds were moved from the allocated reserves to the projects. And then there are the projects that were completed or deleted. There were 6 completed and 1 deleted, which resulted in a decrease of $3.8 million. And then beginning on page 2, continuing on page 3, and ending up on page 4, are 89 active projects that were modified for cost changes and cash flow adjustments, and that resulted in a $273.5 million increase. The next section is a breakdown of the reserve changes by system preservation or enhancement. The system preservation reserve decreased by $390.7 million, and the reserve for the enhancement projects increased by $44.8 million, which is a net decrease of $345.9 million. And then the last section is a summary of the changes from the draft to the final. The first item is the projects. This is the $385.2 million increase is the sum of all of the projects that were listed individually on pages 1 through the top of this page. Or I'm sorry, 2 through the top of this page. And then the change in the reserves, and that brings us back to our net change for the 6-year period of $39.3 million increase. Now, if we turn to the next attachment, where are the projects? This is a breakdown of the projects by location. And Kennedy Highway is the largest at this time due to the I-95 ETL northbound extension projects. Then we go on to the next pie chart. What are the categories of projects? And this is the type of work that's being done. In most of the Kennedy Highway, I-95 ETL northbound extension projects are categorized as safety and capacity improvements. So that's why that section is the largest on this chart. And that's all I have for today, unless you have any questions.
Sorry, the microphone was off. Seems like, Member Cox, you have a question? No. Oh, okay, great. He was just getting ready for loading up. Do we have any questions from the member? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the fiscal year 2022 to 2027 Consolidated Transportation Program.
I'll second.
And we have a second by Member Gangemi. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Oh. All right. We only have one more, Member Carroll. I think I'll try to make sure I let you get in before I cut you off.
I appreciate that, Chairman Powell.
Yeah, no problem, sir. You know, us Southern Maryland guys do have to stick together. For some reason, I'm not doing it today. All right, the motion carries, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, the last approval item for the day is fiscal year 2022 to 2027 financial fiscal forecast. It'll be a 6-year financial fiscal forecast, and we have Christina Thompson, and this is item number 11. So Christina, you are up. Oh, there you are. Hello.
Hello.
Good afternoon. Almost afternoon, right?
Yeah,
Good morning.
Good morning. It's still good morning, yeah. For the record, Chris Thompson, Deputy Director of Finance. I'm here to request approval of the 22 to 27 financial forecast. The 22 to 27 financial forecast was originally approved on July 29th and updated on August 26th. The August financial forecast included an updated TNR forecast, which was completed earlier than in the past, and provided an opportunity to update the forecast prior to submission of the Joint Chairman's report on alleviating fiscal stress concerns. This forecast includes the most recently issued TNR forecast, the final FY22 to 27 CTP that was just approved, and the FY23 preliminary operating budget that was just approved. Throughout the forecast period, the MDTA meets its financial goals of $350 million unencumbered cash and 2 times debt service coverage. MDTA remains above its trust agreement rate covenant. There are no system-wide toll increases in the forecast period. Debt to be issued during the forecast period is $645.5 million. Maximum outstanding indebtedness within the forecast period remains below the cap of $3 billion at $2.46 billion. Debt service paid over the forecast period is $871.1 million. The primary differences between the update and the August 21 forecast are an increased revenue of $3.8 million, primarily due to investment income, decreased operating budget expenses of $2.8 million, increased capital expenses of $39.3 million, which is attributed to rollover from fiscal '21, and decreased debt issuances and debt service. Revenue bond issuances decreased by $72.4 million, and projected debt service declines by $8.8 million over the period due to an increase in net revenue available for PAYGO capital spending following the true-up of the '21 actual revenues and expenses. I should note that this financial forecast assumes obtaining a TIFIA loan for the Nice Bridge at a lower interest rate. The likelihood of a TIFIA loan is at best questionable. A forecast will present it in the future to reflect the TIFIA outcome when more is known. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the fiscal year 2022 to 2027 financial forecast.
So moved.
All right, Member Carroll. Do I have a second?
I got one in.
I have a second by Member Gaines. I'll probably still forget and go past you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's unanimous. Thank you. We're in the home stretch. Next up is an update, the rest are updates. So biannual review of revenue sufficiency. We have Chantel Green. Hello again.
Hello again. So the authority's board operating policy requires a biannual review of revenue sufficiency to ensure that our current toll rates and fees are sufficient in order to meet our expected spending levels. Chris just eloquently went over the financial forecast, and you'll note within that forecast that we meet all of our coverage ratios and targets and legal and policy requirements over the forecast period. As such, our current toll revenues and anticipated discounts and things of that nature are sufficient over the forecast period. So with that, that concludes my remarks.
Any questions? Okay, hearing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, Jeffrey Brown will be back, and he's going to be updating us on the first quarter operating budget comparisons, the actual versus the projected fiscal 2022 budget spending. Welcome back.
Thank you. Again, this is Jeffrey Brown, Budget Director at MDTA. As just mentioned, I'm here to provide an update of the first quarter performance to the full year 2022 budget. As of September 30th, we are at 12% spend of the budget compared to a target of 23%. All objects were below the targeted spending level, with only Object 9 close to the targeted spend at 18%. It's going to probably sound a little repetitive as we go through this, but I kind of want to say up front that this is typical first quarter performance, being below budget for a few reasons. One is we still have the vacancies in the head count, as well as what I call seasonality and lumpiness of invoices. Typically you'll have certain expenses occur much heavier later in the year, and certain invoices, equipment ordering, things like that are lumpier in nature, and you don't see them come through smoothly through the year. So not unsurprisingly, the first quarter is below budget, but we do expect, at least at this point, to come back close to budget at this point. So moving on to a little bit more detail, the Object 1 salaries and wages were at 5% spent. This is a result of the ongoing vacancies for headcount. Communications was at 6% spent. The main driver for that is the state-paid telecommunications invoices, which is worth $1.7 million. That hasn't occurred yet, so that's what's driving that underspend in that object. Object 4 is below budget at an 8% spend. Typically, travels occurs or ramps up in the summer months, and there is still a little bit limiting of travel due to COVID-19. Fuel and utilities, Object 6 is below budget at 12% spend. This is continued to reduce electricity and fuel needs due to the transition to cashless tolling, fewer toll collectors, more teleworking, and again, these items typically are heavier in the winter months when we expect some of those costs to come back. Motor vehicle operations and maintenance is below at 14% spend. Insurance, Object 0704, has yet to be invoiced, so that's driving a lot of the underspend in that. And again, heavier spending is expected in the winter months. Contractual services is below at 1% spend. The real big driver of this is Easy Pass Service Center cost. We have not seen actual invoices or actual expenses hit the account yet. Those will hit the account, so we do expect that to come back towards budget as we go throughout the year. Supplies and materials, Object 9 is at an 18% spend. Salt, unsurprisingly, 0% spend at this point. It's a winter expense. One of the few objects that's above budget is ammunition, which is Object 0934 at 139% spend. This is due to the annual payment for the TASER contract, which occurs within the first quarter, and there was some additional purchases from the asset forfeiture account for this account. Replacement equipment and additional equipment both are below spend, and really for the same reason. That's the timing of equipment ordering and receiving. We haven't actually received some of the equipment as of this point. And then finally, fixed costs, Object 13 is at a 2% spend, again, primarily due to an insurance expense of $4.2 million, which is yet to occur, so that's keeping the expense below budget. So that concludes my presentation. As mentioned, I think it's really the lumpiness of seasonality and invoices coming through that's driving this, so we expect really to be closer to budget at this point.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any questions? Hearing none, thank you very much. Jeannie, you're back. Item 14, update the first quarter capital budget comparison. We're going to look at the actual versus projected 2022 capital budget spending. So, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm reporting on the status of the actual fiscal year 22 spending against the fiscal year 22 capital budget in the fiscal year 22 to 27 draft consolidated transportation program. And this information was presented to the Finance Committee on November 9th. As of September 30th, 10.4% of the fiscal year 22 budget was spent as compared to the targeted spending level of 25%. The total budget for fiscal year 22 is $602.9 million. The actual spending through the first quarter was $62.8 million. The first quarter percentage is typically low because there are outstanding accruals for work that was completed in fiscal year 21. 67 of the 95 projects budgeted in fiscal year 22 were within the acceptable spending limits of 0 to 50%, which is plus or minus 25% of the 25% target. Due to normal lags in invoicing, generally 2 months, a plus or minus 25% threshold was determined to be reasonable. Actual spending through the first quarter for 8 projects budgeted for more than $10 million each in fiscal year 22 was $48.1 million. And we can see those 8 projects in attachment A. And they range from almost $228 million for the nice Middleton Bridge replacement, and then on down to almost $12 million for one of the projects that's in the ETL northbound extension group, the Eccleston mitigation. And overall, the spending on those, just for this part of the budget, was 12%. Are there any questions?
Yeah. So I get the fact that there's a delay in billing on these contracts, but do you have, like for the nice Middleton Bridge, do we have some of the last quarter of the prior fiscal year, some of those billings dropping over into here? I guess we don't. It looks like we don't.
No, that's the part, the work that was completed in the last quarter of 21 that we weren't billed for yet.
Right.
Was entered as an expenditure in 21. But then in 22, it's showing as a negative amount. And when the invoice actually comes in for it, they'll cancel each other out. So that's why it's so low.
I think it's 2 sets of rules almost. You have the prior year is on an accrual, and this year's on cash. So it's always going to show that. It's just meaningless report almost.
Well, it's one of the standard accounting practices.
I kind of see that every year, I guess. But thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Member Carey, you still on the line?
I am.
All right, well, guess what? You're up.
You're up.
It's a Human Resources Committee report.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say before I gave the report that it's been the honor of my MDTA career to be member Lee Gaines for a day, sitting in the chair of this committee. So thank you for that opportunity, member Gaines.
Well, it's a shame you're not here because we had a little gift for you for that.
Trophy for you.
Yeah, but you're not here, so you don't get it. Proceed, sir.
A Kit Kat here
Yeah,
for you.
yeah, whole thing of Kit Kat. Have your name tag here, too.
The HR committee, discussed several, I think, important topics and key initiatives happening. One was getting an update on what was going on with the fraudulent unemployment claims and where we were in handling that process and adjudicating through it. The second thing was discussing what was going on with, an overview of what was going on with the Return to Work Committee. A great discussion around that, great updates in that space as well. The workforce performance metrics report. The committee got an update on reporting requirements for what was happening in the telework space, and I thought that was I think the board would, the subcommittee would say rather, that we had a great discussion around that, making sure that we are sort of adequately tracking performance and making sure that we're capable of measuring organizational results in a meaningful and substantive way. Even the last thing we talked about were the results of the FMT salaries review study, and there were some reports and updates on prevailing wages being brought up far, if you will, as a result, I think, in part to the minimum wage of Maryland going up and how that impacted some of the classes and steps as well. I would add to what Will Pine said a little earlier, we as an authority are dealing with some of the same challenges with regard to filling a variety of positions that remain unfilled. And I don't want to speak for any other member of the board, but I would think that is a concern for us short and long term in terms of not just the retention of high quality talent, but the attraction of it as well. And, I think Tanya reported there are 220, 250 open positions somewhere in that neighborhood, all in, and you include police as well. Pretty big number. So we got an update, clearly on that. And that as a board member is concerning to me that we have the inability in some cases to attract a strong enough pool of talent to fill in under those positions. So that's it. My perspective of how the meeting went, and certainly if entertain any questions if anybody has any.
Excellent. I think we have, all the members here have their hands up to ask you a question. So bear with us.
Okay.
I'm joking. Do we have any questions from Member Kerr? He was ready, apparently. Okay. With that,
If anybody wants to know how it felt to be Lee Gaines, amazing.
there'll be a Facebook post about it later. My day is Lee Gaines. Okay, Jim, are you on the line still?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, you are it. You're closing us out.
That's it. Okay, very good. Well, good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members. This month, board meeting has been quite extensive, so I'll keep the remarks brief. This past Tuesday, November 16th, marked the conclusion of the 2021 Maryland Department of Transportation CTP meetings. This year was a return to in-person meetings, with the majority of counties holding the meetings in person, while a few counties held their meetings virtually. The CTP meeting schedule is arduous, at the very least, with meetings in the evenings and sometimes two in one day. It's almost impossible for one person at an agency to be able to represent all of them. That's why I would be remiss if I didn't recognize Melissa Williams, MDTA's Director of Planning and Program Development, for all that she does in representing the MDTA. MDTA's representative for the CTP meetings, and she does a fantastic job. Next subject, I'm also pleased that some of the board members were able to visit the project site of the new Nice Middleton Bridge since our last board meeting. I want to, obviously give a big shout out to Brian Wolf, Tony Tabasco, Natalie Henson, and Ebony Moore for organizing the site visit. I think you'll agree with me that it is quite a sight to be seen, to be honest with you. I wanted to pass on a few highlights of the project's progression for the folks out there in TV land. There are 845 concrete, 36-inch, and 60-inch concrete piles. Of that amount, about 70 piles remaining to be positioned, scheduled to be completed by mid-December of 2021. Waterline footings, there's 32 total, 7 remaining, scheduled to be completed in January of 2022. Structural steel fabrication is complete. They began erecting steel girders for the main channel spans, and we've begun placing concrete for decks, scheduled to take 30 weeks to complete the 59 separate decks. We're still on schedule for the bridge project completion in the fourth quarter of 2024. A few board meetings ago, I mentioned that our communications division was going to be adding a MDTA 50 at 50 website to the MDTA website, and I'm happy to report that the website has gone live. The MDTA at 50 website can be found at mdta.maryland.gov/MDTA at 50. It's available to the public, and I encourage everyone, when they have a moment, to take a look. It has historical photos of 50 pieces of history, video series, a 3D interactive toll booth, an interactive timeline, and governor's proclamation. More will be added as our communications division continues to collect and post important milestones in the MDTA's history. With that, that wraps it up, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
For me.
Any questions for Mr. Ports?
He forgot the most important event that happened since the last board meeting, which was the Bay Bridge Run.
Bay Bridge Run. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Remember again, Jimmy participated in that, correct?
I'm happy to.
Member Jimmy, yeah.
He's happy to report he survived.
Member Jimmy, that was probably the most important to you for sure. And I was really impressed that the next day when I called you to see how you were doing, you said you were fine.
I was fine.
Hurting, just thinking about it, but you said you were fine.
He was hurting in spirit.
I do want to say that it was a good event. I mean, it was well organized, well run. I think everything went really smoothly.
Right.
So I can say that I did a visual inspection of the eastbound Bay Bridge, and all is good.
And to tag onto that, the feedback that we got following the run, and this is a credit to, I saw Richard here earlier, I'm not sure if he's still here, a credit to Richard, Colonel Anderson, and their team, how quickly the bridge traffic was restored back to normal. I think when the bridge was, when the run was finished, the delay may have only been like 1.5 miles or so. So they were able to clear that, get it back up and running, and there was hardly any, we received no complaints at all, which we would generally receive a lot of complaints on any, as Will is shaking his head, yes, any traffic issues, but it was well advertised ahead of time, well planned out, so it was a great job all the way across the board. So, and to one other thing, as far as what Jim mentioned on the CTPs and Melissa, I had the pleasure of participating in CTPs with both of them. MDTA does not lose a beat when Melissa's there and Jim is not. I mean, it's seamless. So you guys are well represented by Melissa there and Jim as well. But, you know, to tag on to what Jim said about Melissa's participation, she's been fantastic, as you may imagine, Jim has been too. So with that, I would like to close out with the Secretary/Chairman's appreciation for the juggling of the meeting and the accommodating of the agenda for him. I know it was a little bit, it was an interesting way that we had to do things today. It worked seamlessly, and that's thanks to the staff and the members for being very, very accommodating. And so again, thank you all. Natalie and Ebony, we wouldn't be doing this without you, so thank you very much. With that, I would be happy to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Member Gangemi? Second by Member Gaines. Is anyone opposed to adjourning the meeting? Great.
You're going to go for a yay?
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks.